Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. Very interesting how I think about some things to present, and then I tend to get calls specifically on that, especially when I haven't had a lot of calls historically in the past. What I wanted to talk today to you about is fractional ownership transactions. And so, for some of you, you don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to give you a brief definition. There are some companies out there like Ember and I can't remember the something Casa, and sometimes just private entities. But the basic premise is this: you take a higher end property, typically higher price tag property that maybe isn't going to move very easily. Company comes in or an individual comes in and puts that property in the ownership of an LLC. Now, quick reminder, an LLC is its own legal person and it is also considered a business, right? That's right, why you register it with the Department of Commerce. So the way these tend to look is somebody will then say, hey, I am selling 1/8 of this property. Well, in reality, it's not 1/8 of the property. What they're doing, they divide the LLC up into, it doesn't have to be eight, but that seems to be the most common number, eight slices of ownership. But it's ownership in the LLC, ownership in the business. And the business happens to own some real estate, but that layer, that one step removed, is hugely significant, right? Because when people are doing these transactions, they're not selling real estate. They're selling ownership in a business, right? The Real Estate License Practices Act, the law that governs our licensure, and yes, I did have a lengthy discussion with the DRE about this, does not give us the right to do these deals. There's nothing in the Real Estate License Practices Act that says, yes, you as a licensee can sell, businesses. In fact, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as some additional Utah law, governs the selling of businesses, and especially investment in businesses. You see where this is going, right? You don't have an SEC license. You have a license to sell real estate. And unfortunately, it looks and feels a lot like real estate because the business happens to have some ownership in real estate. It also might have ownership in a golf cart. It might have ownership in 10 other things. But at the core, the fractional ownership you're buying is in a business. And that's the part that you need to keep focused on. So recently, we've had some agents submit these, have asked questions on these, submitted real estate purchase contracts for the opportunity to own 1/8 of a business. It's not real estate. So inherently, right out of the gate, we're breaching our fiduciary of reasonable care and knowing what our legal documents do and don't do, and understanding the term of real estate versus a business interest. I took this further. I called the attorney that we have on retainer that has been a real estate attorney for a number of years. And I'll make the conversation very short. He said, as a real estate agent, I wouldn't touch these with a 10-foot pole because you do not have licensure for them. Your E&O doesn't cover them. And there is at least a higher probability of litigation. And so we are currently discussing, and I called, by the way, I called the UtahRealEstate.com, the MLS, talked to Brad Belke, the CEO. Even nationally, this is an issue, and a lot of people are punting right now. Nobody's coming out of the gate and saying yes or no. That doesn't mean that is a tacit endorsement that we could or even should do these deals. So we are currently talking within the leadership of the company to update our policies and procedures, but I think we're leaning towards our official policies. We don't do this because we don't have SEC licensing, nor do you, and our clients shouldn't have the expectation that we can do these when we can't. And certainly, if you do one of these deals, it absolutely would not go on a real estate purchase contract. And if you were to do that and submit earnest money, we will not be putting that earnest money in our trust account because it's a real estate trust account. And if we put money in for a business investment, we would be commingling funds and we would be in the crosshairs of the Division of Real Estate. So I know that's a messy or a prolonged explanation, but I wanted you to have the pieces of the puzzle that are very concerning to us as a company. I would just say this also. With the amount of energy that we spend on transactions, when you're buying 1/8, even if it's $1 million property, 1/8 is what? 12, 13%. So that'd be $120,000 or $130,000 transaction. No offense, but that's not exactly a huge transaction with a lot of commission dollars at stake and the inherent risk that would come with it, let alone putting your licensure at risk for doing something we're not actually licensed to do, seems to me to be a bad play. I will update you when we come out with an official company position, but I would consider this, if you can read between the lines, an unofficial, currently, company position on these transactions. We certainly want to give you a heads up, and would definitely put a stick in the sand and say beyond this date we would not even entertain these. There might be some in process that we need to figure out how to manage those, mitigate those, or whatever. But I just have a pretty strong feeling on this. If you have specific situations that you think we're not considering as a company or you'd like us to consider on this topic, by all means, reach out. The good news is, as a percentage of our business, this is a small amount, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't be a potentially significant misstep if we got this wrong. So I hope that helps, and I hope you're having a great week, and we'll talk soon.